If you were online, you may have seen my title for today was Goliath versus the Giants. You can feel it up there. And no, that wasn't the typo. You'll kind of see, hey, wait a minute, that's not usually how I heard about this in Sunday school. But that's going to be our focus for tonight. Tonight we're going to look at probably the most famous Bible story there is, except maybe Jesus and the cross. I mean, everybody knows the story. And so I'm going to attempt to see if we can learn something new from this today, even though we've heard it for years and years and years. But let's familiarize ourselves with it briefly. If you got a Bible, bust that out. If you got a phone, you use that. It'll be up on the screen. Also, feel free to follow along whatever you want. I'm using the ESV, but you can use whatever else you got for the Word of God. Let's take a look at the story, read through a few verses. 1 Samuel 17, starting in verse 3. I'm going to kind of skip through some of the main parts and catch that, and we'll just kind of get the highlights as we're going. So, chapter 17, starting in verse 3. And the Philistines stood on the mountain on the other side, the enemies of Israel, and the Israelites stood on the mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath. Boo. You guys are with me. Very good. Thank you, Clint. Good job. Whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Basically, he was 9.5 feet tall. There were giants that lived during that time, kind of a different bloodline than we have here today. We can get to that much later on, but there's a giant 9.5 feet tall who comes out from the enemy's army. Picking up in verse 8 again, so skipping down. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all the Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. I'd be pretty scared too. I won't say what I might do if that happened. I'm scared. So let's get down to verse 32, catch up for the end of the story. The word gets around, people are scared, their knees are knocking in the camp. Go down to verse 32. And David said to Saul, who's the king of Israel, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. He struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." And David said, "The Lord delivered me from the paw of the lion, from the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." We've read the story, we know that God wins. But I want to pause in the middle of this and kind of talk through the situation. Total side thought, we'll come back. How many of you guys watched the game today? Okay, I'm talking about the real sport that was being played in Brazil today. How many of you guys watched the USA soccer game? Okay, a few of us, okay? Come on, it's so sad. So, anybody watched the game on Monday last week? I did, yeah, okay, a few more of us. Okay. Well, you're going to have some, you have to get excited about this, because it's really exciting, okay? Okay, we're doing really well. We beat our opponent on Monday. We tied one of the great teams today, the 4th-ranked team in the world, the U.S. tied, almost beat, except for the last 30 seconds we tied. But I want to talk about the game last week, on Monday. We played Ghana, which is our arch rival in the World Cup. They beat us. They kick us out of the tournament every time. So there's a lot of excitement building up to this. You could almost say it was almost like this David and Goliath feeling to last week's game, because the USA is not always kind of the top team when it comes to soccer. Basketball, we can usually dribble, circles around everybody else. American football, nobody else really plays that, so yeah, we're the best, I'll throw that out there. But when it comes to soccer, we're the David, and the other teams are the Goliaths. And Ghana had beaten us many times before. So Jody Passmore had invited me over to his house to watch the game. I don't have a TV, I don't have any cable. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I could actually watch a game. Thank you, Tammy, for letting me come over to your house. It was awesome. So we're sitting there, we're watching the game, and he taped it ahead of time because he had work. The game's on at 12. And on a Monday, he's working until about 5. And so we say, okay, we'll just watch the tape. I'm not going to listen to the radio. I'm not going to go on Facebook because everybody will be posting about the game, whether we win or lose. So we get to his house, and this brings up that kind of question for me too. What kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person that likes to watch it live? Or are you like, I'm just happy to watch the highlights and catch the game online? We'll get to that later on tonight. So the game starts, and it's amazing. On Monday, the U.S. team scores one of the fastest goals in World Cup history. 30 seconds into the game, we're in the lead. Now, if you know soccer, there's only like 1 or 2 points usually in the game. So to score 30 seconds in against your arch rival, against Goliath, Ghana, which is nothing against Ghana, I love Ghana, but the country, not the soccer team. Anyway, it was amazing. We're like, oh, cheering. You feel like those Europeans who go crazy, when the soccer team scores. It's really good. There's just 2 of us in the room, and Tammy's kind of looking funny at us, I think. But anyway, we're excited. The game goes on, though. This shocker of a score by the U.S. team beginning, and now it starts to look bad because we really aren't controlling the ball. The other team is making all these shots. We're barely scraping by. By halftime, I'm thinking, oh no, we're going to lose it in the second half. We just don't look good at all. The second half starts, and Tammy starts asking us questions like, what time of the game is it? And then a little longer, what time of the game is it? And all of a sudden we figured out, she's watched the game ahead of time, and she knows something's coming. And I'm like, stop! I don't want anything to happen. We're in the lead. It's so exciting. Toward the end of the second half, the other team scores. It's like, oh, because we feel like the way we're playing, we're never going to score. The game is about to finish up. I'm so frustrated. And then just 5 minutes after the other team scores, the U.S. scores again. And we're cheering, yeah, we're in the lead again. It's unheard of. We're going to win our first match. The U.S. never wins the first match, let alone be 1 out of 3 matches. And the game goes on. We just got a few minutes to last, and then the buzzer, and the U.S. has won its first match. One of the great games we played in U.S. soccer history. And most of you don't even care because you didn't watch soccer. Too bad. You get to enjoy it today. Amazing game. Now, in the story of the Bible, we know what the end of the story of life on earth is. You look at Revelation, you look at some other books, Isaiah, Daniel, it gives you a glimpse of how the end is going to go. And for life here on earth, we know that good wins over evil. We get to cheat and look ahead at the highlights. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen in between. So unlike Tammy, who knows exactly how the game is going to play out, we have just to live out this part, even though we know what the ending is going to be like. But we don't know where each battle is going to be. We don't know when the teams are going to score good and evil in our lives, in our country, in our city, in our spheres. But we know they're going to take place. Here's a verse. It's on the screen. I'm going to read it to you. Mark 13:32. A lot of people want to say, hey, I know exactly how it's going to end, the exact time, kind of like you had the highlight reel. But this is Jesus speaking in Mark 13, verse 32. I used it a couple weeks ago. But concerning that day, the end, or that hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. But be on guard, keep awake, Jesus says. Sometimes I wish I could look ahead and see what was going to happen. If you were here for last week's message from Ron, maybe you wish you had a TARDIS, which we're going to bring up once more. It's that booth from the show Doctor Who. It's a time machine. And you could go forward, you could go backward and see how things played out. You could go back in time, you could see what happened in the beginning of our country. You could see what happened in the Civil War. You could see the JFK assassination. Ooh, like that. You could go forward. You can see where our country's going to head because a lot of us are wondering where are we going to be in 5, 10, 20 years. But part of me thinks, that would kind of spoil it. I'm not one of those guys that likes to do it. If I'm going to be in the game, if I'm going to watch it, I don't want the spoiler ahead of time. Because when you've watched the game ahead of time, you know what's going to happen, it's really no fun to sit through the rest of the game. I think knowing what was going to happen in my life would just take all the excitement out of it. For example, this church, Engage. A year and a half ago when my wife and I signed up and said, yes, we'll be church planters, I had no idea we'd be at this place. And it has been a joy. I always joke around, I told this, our church planting guy several years, I don't want to do church planting, that sounds like too much work. He was right, it was a lot of work. But it's been so much joy. And the joy is also in that risk of not knowing how things are going to go and trusting God. And He's just come through. And you guys have been making that happen as we reach out to new people and see this place do some amazing things. Another piece of that story was our splash day yesterday. The team from Georgia had to be a part of that. Tammy and Jody, you guys blessed us. Danny and a couple other families that were here. Amazing. One family, I won't name who they were, one of our families drove by the event and said, there's too many people at that event. That can't be our event. It was amazing to hear that. You know, because I wasn't expecting about 200 people to show up to our event yesterday. But we just saw God open the doors up and reach a lot of people, get to get information out about our church and our EBS. I'm just loving it. If I had known that was going to happen ahead of time, that would have taken all the joy in the event out of it. Maybe not all of it, but most of it. Not knowing has made that joy all the greater as I walk this journey with you and seeing what God is going to do in this church. I got this next verse on the screen talking about knowing ahead of time. This is out of the book of Deuteronomy, one of Jesus' favorites to quote. This is a verse that someone passed me a couple years ago that I love. Deuteronomy 29:29. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us and our children forever, that we may do all the words of this law. We don't know everything. We don't know how things are going to play out. But we know the few things that we need to know. That's what this is. It lets us know the few. You may say, that's not very few. There's a lot of things on earth to see play out, to know. God's given us the basics here. The Word teaches us the basics of how to live here on earth, how to live holy, how to live righteous. But it won't tell us how to win a World Cup. It's not in here. It won't tell us how to plant a church. It won't tell us necessarily all the intricate details of you need to buy this, and you need to contract this. It'll tell you the basics of trusting God, following after Him. It won't tell you how to build the Statue of Liberty. It just won't, okay? Got them all in early today. But the basics of what we need to know are there in the Scriptures. For the rest of life, we get to take risks. We get to take the basics, say, okay, I've got this. The school that I'm going to choose to go to, you know, Sabrina didn't know probably a year ago that she was going to be here at UHE. Did you? But she took a risk, and she came out here. We get to enjoy that decision she made, and she's here joining with us, meeting friends, helping out with children, seeing what God's going to do with her life here. A lot of you families, and I can name a bunch of you guys, we have taken risks because we don't know exactly where God says, okay, in 5 years you're going to live in this city, or in 5 years you're going to meet this person and marry them. That kind of instructions aren't in here, but the basics for following after God are. And I'm glad that everything isn't lined out, because the risk that we take in those other decisions as we trust God, we pray, and we ask for direction, is where the joy comes when we see that. And yes, with that comes risk of failure, risk of pain, but it's worth it for the risk of joy that we get in living out our lives. Taking risks means we don't know the outcome ahead of time. We can't watch the highlights first and then choose to participate. Coming back to our story we talked about, when David chose to fight Goliath, it was a risk. It's a big risk. He's twice his size. He's carrying this massive sword. David gets past this armor. He's like, this isn't going to work for me. I'm just going to go out there with my slingshot. The picture we had up here earlier with him in the loincloth, yes, I just like saying that. Probably a good chance he was wearing something like that. Not much armor at all. It was a risk. But David knew who God was. He knew the basics. He knew who God was. And when this giant came out and defied the army of God, who was calling curses upon them, he knew who God was. And after nobody else would step up to fight for God's glory, he discerned from the past his smaller fights that he had been winning. He fought against the lion who was trying to steal the sheep. He fought against the bear, and God had been there with him. And he discerned that God was going to do that for him again. And he chose to participate. It's really all about the perspective that we have on life. When Goliath came out against the Israelite army, the soldiers all thought, he's so big, we could never kill him. Perspective changed. David comes out, he's so big I can't miss. It's all in how you see with who you have on your side. Perspective makes all the difference. At the cross of Jesus, the Pharisees thought we're killing the guy who's trying to disrupt our whole religious system. But the true perspective was Jesus was coming there to rescue them from their hypocrisy and how they were living. At the cross, the disciples thought they had lost their leader and all hope was lost. but really he had freely given himself up for their forgiveness. And at the cross, the devil thought he had won, but 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead and showed who the true victor was. It's all in perspective. I love it. 1 Corinthians, I don't have this on the screen, but I want to read it to you. It's a great verse. Just talking about perspectives on what we think about what the scriptures say, what it means for our lives. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 1, great memory verse. 1 Corinthians 1, verse 18. For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it's the power of God. A lot of you look at the cross and they say, a God coming down to die for people? What kind of God is that? But to us, we're like, it's the ultimate wisdom because we couldn't save ourselves. We needed help. We needed God in the flesh to show us how to live and to lay us down his life because we couldn't do it on our own. Foolishness to the world, but the wisdom and glory of God to us. Let's finish up the story in 1 Samuel. We'll go back. This is up on the screen. You can follow along there again or on whatever else you have with you for the Bible. So we're back at 1 Samuel. Let's finish the story. You guys know how it turns out. Let's take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 17. We're going to pick it up at verse 41. And the Philistine moved forward and came near to David, and with his shield bearer in front of him, it's not just one guy, there's like two guys David's going after. Maybe that's why he grabbed 5 stones, I don't know. Anyway, verse 42. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance like me. And the Philistine said to David, what are you laughing about? My wife's coming back, she'd agree. And the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. Big mistake. Verse 44, the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds and of the air and the beasts of the field. And David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin. I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And this day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. Yeah, they don't put that in the Sunday school version, but... And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air, also not in the Sunday school version. And all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves not with sword and spear, but the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. And you know, he goes out, one stone, slings it, they're charged the battle line, the stone sinks into his forehead, he falls over dead. David goes over, he picks up the giant sword, which he barely can pick up, maybe, I don't know, and he cuts off his head with his own sword. What a way to die, you know, it's amazing. But then the whole army, he's like, God's gonna win! They start charging and they win the battle, they just rout the enemy, and it's awesome. Big bloody guy story. I love the big bloody guy stories in the Bible, it's awesome. In Sunday school, when I was growing up, probably when you were too, you were in church, we often use this story to teach that the puny kid is the hero when God's strength overcomes a giant. And if you follow after this God, then you can be the hero too. And that's not necessarily bad. But recently I've been seeing the story a little different. You know, it's always the David versus Goliath, you know, the puny kid versus the giant. But the other day I was thinking about this story, and I realized it was the puny 9.5-foot human against the giant who is our God. The puny 9.5-foot giant, Goliath, who's out there saying, I'm gonna win! And God's like, are you kidding me? You know, like that. It's the giant versus God, or Goliath versus the giant, who tried to brag against a giant God. I don't want to take away anything from the story. It's an important lesson. God's saying, you trust in me, you look for my glory. When you fight for that, I'm with you. I don't want to take away from that, but I don't want to miss who the real hero of this story is. The real hero is our God. And it shows that he can take us in these puny forms that we are, that can't do much pull-ups or push-ups, and can use us for great things. He can take this nerdy kid who graduated from YKI High School here and use him to do some neat stuff, hopefully, in the community that he grew up in. He takes all of you, each in the areas that you grew up in, and wants to use you guys for giant things. This wasn't a fair fight. Goliath never had a chance against our God. And this is the same God that's fighting on our side. When we look at his word, discerning correctly what it says, and we take risks for him, he's fighting with us. David saw things differently than the rest of the people. He didn't see the comparison of the physical strength that was too much to overcome. He saw the comparison spiritually, of spiritual strength, and he believed he could win. David viewed Goliath through the lens of God's glory, and he saw new things. When I used to go diving at night, I couldn't see a thing. People would say, don't you see the lobsters and all other fish at night? And I'm like, I can't see a thing because I don't have any glasses on at night. I can barely tell after the second row who's sitting there. Okay? And all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, my wife got me a prescription lens mask. And I put it on, and I went night diving, and I was like, lobsters come to me. Perspective change when you see things clearly. Where do you see giants who are mocking the living God in your life, in your community? And where do you feel you are called to fight for his glory in our world? Those are the questions I think each of us have to answer. And one of the things that God put on my heart was passion to fight for God's glory amongst the college students and the young families in our community. And you guys have seen that too. You've become a part of this, and we're just so blessed to have you guys here with us, fighting for that same glory, reaching your friends. And maybe you have a different fight. I know I've talked to Jess before, and she has an amazing passion for reaching out for God's glory amongst the homeless people. Maybe your passion, your fight is somewhere else. Maybe it's in the same exact place. Maybe it's a different person, different family. Maybe it's in your workplace. Maybe for this week, for Gabe, it seems like it's a lot of work, to go ahead and work with all these kids from VBS. But this is a giant problem for Gabe. Risk it, Gabe. It may be these lies that are telling you you can't stop a certain behavior, that giant lie that's fighting against you, ruining your marriage. Fight. Take risk against whatever that is. Maybe it's the enemy who's telling you, you don't know enough about God to share with your friends. You can't do this at all. Risk it for God, for his glory. We're going to call the band up here. Sometimes the world can lull us into just sitting back and watching from the sidelines. Just catching the highlights. We know then this is going to end up. We're just going to kind of watch the game. We'll be those commentators, they should have done this, or man, if they had done this, or substitute this person, this person had just done this a little differently, the game would have turned out so different. Those people kind of bug me, because they're not really playing the game. They just want to feel all smart and high about what's going on. The dangerous thing is that sometimes we get into that at church. We have all these good ideas what we should do differently to reach people. Unless we step out and do them, we're just those commentators who are full of pride and think they know how to do things. My charge to you guys today is to risk. May you risk it all for God's glory. May you see those battles. People are defying the living God in your circles, in your community. Would you stand up and fight? Would you risk sharing what God has given for all of us? Don't settle for just the highlights at the end of the game. Get involved in the game. As we shared that video at the beginning, we'd love for you to come and be a part of this church. To step up and say, hey, I have a passion for this. Let's do something about that. Come talk to me. Come talk to Pastor Al. We'd love to see where our passions can align. We can do this together. Fight for God's glory and enjoy the excitement of risk. Yeah, we might fail once in a while, but it's worth the risk. One of my things I love to say here in our church is, I'm willing to try a bunch of things and fail at a lot of them, and then we know not to do that again. We'll try something different. We'll try apples to apples in service, and if everybody thinks it's really sacrilegious, then we won't do it anymore. Or if it really gets people involved, then man, that's great. Let's throw this big interruption in the middle of the service and have snacks, and oh my goodness, people meet each other and get to connect and share their lives, and it's been this amazing thing. If you've got an idea of what we should do, I want to hear about it. We're getting ready and geared up for this summer of doing ministry with families. We're trying some new things with these family movie nights. We're getting ready to do some more small groups. I'm really excited about where God's taking us. And all of you guys here have been a big role in that. I'm really excited. We have no idea what's going to happen in the fall when all the students come back. we're feeling pretty good, comfy in this one service. We know we can't stay here when the fall comes. We're praying, God, do we risk and get new space earlier? Because that would sound really scary because we're just a new baby church, but God's been faithful. So pray for us on those when we're making those decisions, and let me know about your passions where we can come in later with that.
to be